Nearly 100 people paint this scene in watercolor. How different can they be? Which ones do you like and why? Hello, I'm Tim Wilmot, watercolor painter and tutor. I organise fairly regular online watercolor workshops, and this is a compilation of attendee paintings from my June 2022 online workshop. Every month, well, nearly every month, watercolor enthusiasts from all over the world join me for about a couple of hours paint along experience where I do a live step-by-step demo and answer attendees' questions along the way. Last month, or June 2022, we painted this scene, which is the village of Biddestone, and we're in the shadows of the White Horse pub. Quite a pretty typical English village. You can't see it, but there's a lovely village pond just over there. That sort of darker edge there. But on the left-hand side, we've got framing the scene, the shady part of the pub, the entrance to the pub. Quite a dominant conifer tree, almost in the middle there, in the middle ground. Nice shadows coming across the ground, a few benches and parasols, and then over on the right, quite complicated with all of those houses there on the right hand side of the road, a little bit of perspective to deal with, and some cars. Also, we put some figures in as well just to further complicate things. So I'm going to show you the attendee paintings one by one and give a short little critique of each one as I go through. Please, what I say is just my own opinion. Of course, with art, it's very much a personal thing, and I may like a painting and you may dislike it for a certain reason, but that's art for you. So what I'm looking for in each painting is composition, drawing skills, how have they done the figures and the cars, and then watercolor techniques, edges, values, colors, and other techniques as well, sticking to the brief. Now, I paint in a particular style. People that paint along with me on the workshop don't need to follow my style. It's fairly open. We have painters of all different levels attending as well. So you may see some different styles, some different interpretations, which is always interesting to see one view and how many people can interpret that scene so differently. Also bear in mind that when people take photographs of their own art, there will be different lighting conditions, different settings on the camera, on the photo, and what you see may not be an exact representation of reality of the real painting. So just bear that in mind. Some photos will be lower resolution, others higher resolution, brighter colors, better lighting, natural lighting, and so on. They all kind of can distort the real colors. Now, if you want to take part in future events, just go up to crowdcast.io/Tim Wilmot. You'll be able to see this workshop, the Biddestone one, and a whole load of others as well that you may want to take part in. Even though they've happened, you can still take part and get a little video critique from me. So take a look. Go to crowdcast.io/Tim Wilmot. I'll start with my painting, my demo painting from the day. And I'm fairly pleased with it from a composition point of view. As you can see, in comparison with the source photo, I changed some of the things. I removed that dominant car that was in the bottom left-hand corner. It almost looks like there's a bit of a halo there where it could have been. It's suddenly disappeared. But I didn't think it was so large down in the bottom left corner. And you will see some of the attendees, they keep that in there, and they've done a really good job at it. But for me personally, I don't think it was too powerful down in the bottom left-hand corner. Added the two figures in, sort of half in the shade, half in the sun. A few figures sat on the tables underneath the parasols. I opened up the parasols. They were closed in the source photo. I kept the background really, really simple, and on the right-hand side, the houses as well, and some simple cars. So fairly pleased result. I think, to be critical of myself, the shadows down here are maybe a little bit too purplish. Maybe I could have gone a little bit cooler maybe. And also the edge is quite hard. I think I could have gone, like I actually lifted off a little bit of the edge there. Could have gone a bit softer with the edge of those shadows. Anyway, so let's go through the attendee paintings then one by one, and a short little commentary feedback from me. First up then, Anna. Well, Anna, I think you copied my particular composition. Works really well, really good. I love those figures there. They're very, very good. And the two seated figures as well. The side of the pub, the shady side, maybe could be a little bit darker, and just be careful of a little bit of overworking the shadows. But I think you did really well with this. Just the right colours elsewhere. Good background. The buildings on the right-hand side, very good as well. Maybe the perspective is a little bit out there. Could be the general line of those houses could be going up just a little bit. But good cars as well. Yeah, very, very nice. Well done. Thanks, Anna. Let's go to the next one. And Barb. We've got a little dog there. I'm not sure what breed of dog that is. It's one of those terriers, but excellent idea to include a dog in the scene, which typically you would see in the village there. Yeah, nice, generally a nice composition. The parasols might need to be a little bit wider. They appear quite sort of deep, so I would think maybe make them just a little bit, unless perhaps maybe they're tilting on an angle. That must be the reason. I would say a hard edge might be better in there, Barb. So we've got light and then a hard edge, and then this would all be dark. That might create a little bit more of an impact there. Just be careful of the overworking a little bit with your darker paint in here with those dry brush marks. Don't go in too heavy with the darker paint in there. Cars look good. Houses look good. Yeah, sky nice. Yeah, excellent. Well done, Bob. And Becky. That's a nice colourful scene. You spotted the front gardens of the houses on the left. There was some really nice sort of shrubs and plants in there, and potted plants and hanging baskets and things. So that's a good idea. I think the perspective of the front wall is not quite there. Maybe the top edge needs to be like that, and then maybe the bottom edge a bit steeper, something like that. That would be better. Well done on the figures. I think I prefer the left-hand figure to the right-hand figure. The right-hand figure, maybe the head's just a little bit too small. But the figures seated are very good. Again, just watch the perspective on the right-hand side. We're sloping down just a little bit too much. I think if we had that line there, and the tops of the cars would almost be level, we're going downhill just a little bit too much there. Yeah, well done. I think everything else looks all right perspective-wise. Well done, Becky. And Betty. So Betty included the car in the bottom left corner, and I think it works really well. I love the light that you've got on the back windscreen. That car is... I think when the car is well drawn and well painted, you can get away with it. Perspective is brilliant on this, Betty. You did really well. I love the touch with the birds flying in the sky. And you haven't made that tree like a vivid green like I did it. So yours looks a little bit better actually. That sort of cooler, lighter value. Figures. Now that figure looks a little bit static. With the two bags, maybe have the bags touching the figure, connect them with the figure a little bit more. The photo is not high resolution, but we can sort of see what's going on. The figures are good size in proportion to everything else. Cars on the right hand side, like the one on the left, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, well done, Betty. They're really good on the right hand side. Nice attention to detail. They can be quite complicated doing painting in the windscreens, and you've done really well. We can sort of see through. We can see through these windows and see a little bit of the seating and so on. Yeah, really nice. Yeah, well done, Betty. And Bronwyn. A nice, colourful scene. Could have gone a bit darker on the left-hand building, Bronwyn, on the side of the pub, particularly there. Maybe that could be a bit darker to achieve a little bit more of an impact on that side. Good figures though, nice shadows. Cars on the right hand side, yes, they look okay, but they're sloping down just a little bit too much. Buildings on the right, brilliant. And the sky just a little bit messy with the top edge of the sky there. But other than that, really, really nice. Yeah, I love the shadows as well. They've got a little bit of life to them and lots of sort of different values in there as well. Well done, Bronwyn. And Kathy. So this is a different style. I think this is really loose. You've changed a lot of things in the composition. I like this bit of light creeping into the left-hand side on those shadows. You changed those buildings on the left-hand side, totally different tree. But yet it's still got that appearance of an English village pub with the benches outside, and you've got the parasols closed and folded. You've got a couple of vehicles as well. Would have been nice to have a figure in there just to add a little bit of life to it. But yeah, it's really nice. And a nice and different interpretation of the scene. Well done, Kathy. Chada. Yeah, I like it. I love that tree. The way you've done that tree. It's a beautiful green. And the brush marks that you've used up and down that tree, superb. With the figures, perhaps consider not having them too identical. I know you've changed the colour of the shirt of the figure on the right. It's a little bit warmer, a little bit darker, but maybe just consider having them clothed differently. So maybe a different colour trousers, or make them a little bit different. But figures-wise, they're brilliant. Just watch the overworking of the shadows on the left-hand side. The drawing, though, the perspective is very, very good for the pub. The buildings on the right-hand side, those cars as well. And nice dry brush marks. Well done, Chada. Ching. It's quite loose, this one. I love the colours you've got into the shadows. We've got greens, blues, reds, beautiful. Fairly good figures again, like the previous one. Try and change the configuration of the clothing. I might have done it myself. I might have had mine sort of fairly identical, but with hindsight, it might be good just to consider changing them a little bit. But really good figures, nice seated figures as well. The cars, maybe that one on the right-hand side is just a little bit too much on that right-hand edge, and it looks a little bit small and squashed or sort of squeezed up to the blue one. Maybe we could have just had the blue one, and also the blue one might be a little bit too close to the benches, so just move it. Maybe just have one car there. nicely spaced on that right hand edge. Lovely background. That the green in that tree is fantastic. Very, very nice indeed. And perspective is really good. You got that top edge of the wall really good. The other angles perfect. Yeah. Well done, Ching. Thank you. And Christy. It's got a nice warm feeling about this. Not so sure about the edge of the shadows there. Perhaps there could have been a softer edge, Christy, on that top edge there, but really nice composition. With the trees, maybe try and not make them too perfect, as in that straight edge there and symmetrical as well. Maybe just have a few little imperfections as a suggestion for you. Good background, good house on the right hand side. You've not gone for the cars, but you compensated with more people sat down on these benches. Yeah, really good. Two nice figures there. Shadows. Shadows. Putting aside that top edge there, shadows are really good. I love the colour. And we've got a nice transition as well through that wall down onto the ground. Lovely texture on the ground as well. Well done, Christy. And Dan. A different style again. Now, this pub on the left hand side, I actually now quite like that light sort of bouncing in, that reflected light bouncing into the side of the pub there. It looks really nice, and that bit of light in that central area as well. You've done really well with the drawing. Love the drawing, Dan. Those cars are really good. There, these two cars, especially that red one, fantastic. And the perspective on the right hand side. That tree, very good. Sometimes I don't like things right in the middle, but I think you get away with it with the balance of all the other objects and the sign on that right hand side and the pub on the left. Nice figures, nice start and really loosely done, nice brushwork. Figures there lurking under the shadows. Lovely brush marks, beautiful. Well done, Dan. And Daniel, let's just zoom in a little bit on this one. I really like these figures on this one. They're sort of, you've made more of a feature of these figures, a male and a female figure. I guess I can't tell exactly whether they're walking towards us or walking to the pub, but it doesn't really matter. They're in the shadows there. Just be careful with a shadow on a shadow. There might be, yes, it might be a little bit darker there, but yours is a bit too dark. So just be careful with that. And maybe what you could have done is gone a bit darker with the shadows down here, Daniel, and then maybe sort of connected them with the figure's legs so that there's a gradual transition of one to the other. Everything else, though, is really nice. Perspective is brilliant. Lovely tree. I like the movement in the sky and the clouds. You've got quite a sort of atmospheric background. Just be careful with that sort of border around the parasol there. Perhaps could have gone in with a darker edge or a darker object going across the scene and then hits that light parasol and then maybe reappears on the other side, something like that, just to make it stand out a bit more. But it's a lovely watercolor, really fresh, lovely. And so that was Daniel P. This is another Daniel. I'll just zoom into this. And with Daniels, we're on the similar theme. Two romantic couples walking down the side of this pub. Perspective is nearly there. It's okay on the left-hand side. I think on the right-hand side, we've got the appearance of going uphill a little bit, whereas in actual fact is quite flat. So just be careful with the initial drawing, getting that right. Tree could have been a little bit darker. You've gone for the red parasols. Good idea. Makes them stand out a little bit more. You'll have parasols of all sorts of different colours on pubs like this. With the shadow, I think it might be just a little bit overworked with the shadow. It's the right value, but maybe just a tiny bit overworked. And possibly, Daniel, you might have, well, it looks like you've got a couple of layers then. You just lose that freshness a little bit. But everything else is really good. Actually, I quite like those figures, especially the lady. She's got a nice sort of angle to her and the way they're holding hands. The guy's neck could be a little bit thicker maybe, but really good. Yeah, nice one, Daniel. Thank you very much. And Dave. Is there more than one Dave? No. Dave P, but Dave. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, you got a nice shape to that shadow. Nice, bold objects that you've painted in. Maybe a little bit overworked with the bench here. That might be a little bit too wide. Great, lovely figures though. Not so sure about the stripe on that figure. Maybe if you're going for the shadow, perhaps the line of the shadow could have been like that. So that would be all in the shade and then that would be in the light. I'm not sure if that's what you were trying to do there. Perspective, very good. Yeah, I like it. And lively shadows. Nice tree in the middle ground, good sky. Yeah. Well done, Dave. Thank you. This shrub on the left, I think it looks like you might have done that with a dryish brush, fairly thick paint, maybe just a little bit too dry. That could have looked better being a little bit more solid. I would have thought maybe a bit more definition of some sort of wall or lines on this left-hand side to give it a bit more context, but everything else is brilliant. Like the grass coming across the foreground, little stones and pebbles and things catching the light. Beautiful, well done. Nice pub sign there as well. Thanks, Dave. Doris. Well, we've got a very elegant couple walking towards us with the dark glasses. So really good figures. Again with the shadow, just be careful going over it twice. It looks like you might have gone over this a couple of times, Doris, but you've still managed to keep it fairly fresh. Nice foreground. The perspective is, I think, well, certainly on the left-hand side, really good. And on the right-hand side as well. The cars look all right, but just be careful putting too much detail on the things like the wheels. And that car there looks a little bit odd, but they've certainly got the sort of car shape and feel about them. Nice figures as well. I like that tree. You did a good job on that tree, Doris. Yeah, and just that right value. See how the values make that background go right back. That kind of cool, lighter tonal value pushes it right back compared to the dark green of the shady side of that tree. Well done. Fauzia. Well, this is really colourful. You've picked up on the colour of that building on the left-hand side, which was a sort of warmish, rosy colour. Maybe this is a little bit of line and wash, I think, on this one. I think the main thing here, love the colours, but I think the main thing here are those shadows. Perhaps they did look just a little bit overworked with all the lines within that shadowy area, and try and connect that figure a little bit more to the shadow. So perhaps the shadow could have gone over or connecting with the figure higher up the legs, just so we don't have that sort of angle appearing here. We've got that sort of angle. Maybe have the shadow going, the edge of the shadow going across diagonally like that, and this would all be in the shade. That might look a little bit better. Really well drawn benches. Perspective is nearly there. I think you've changed the right hand side. It looks like a sort of a sunken country lane going up on the right hand side, a little bit different. And you've also put a tree on the right hand side, which again is a good idea from a composition point of view, to have a frame, a border on the left hand side with the pub, the buildings, and then that tree on the right hand side as well. Well done, Fauzi, a different interpretation of the scene. And Helen. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Right, it's a very colourful scene. I'm not so sure about the shadow shape on the left-hand side. This is a little bit too light here. That shadow would have looked a little bit better continuing it up the wall of the buildings, over the garden wall and up the buildings. So that would have looked a little bit better there, rather than it being that particular shape. And just be careful of going over the shadow just a little bit too many times. Good figures though. Perspective elsewhere is pretty good. The cars are a little bit overworked. And again, with the wheels, just be careful overworking them too much. They can make them, I think sometimes when you overdo wheels on a car, it makes them stand out. It looks just a little bit overworked. The umbrellas, too triangular. They need to be a lot shallower and wider. All right. Nice figures though. Good colour, good shade of green for the foliage. The background trees could be lighter, pushes them back. The way you've done those trees, it looks like they're sort of bushes just immediately behind the parasols, or sort of between the parasols and that bigger tree. So the tree could have been darker. These three trees here could have been cooler, lighter, pushes them back a bit more. And Isabel. I love that shadow. That shadow really stands out with these two figures here. I think that's really nice. That it is quite dark, isn't it? You went almost as dark as me. Lovely tree in the distance. Great. Those edges there, fantastic. See these little hard and soft edges, the brush marks you've done, and the background trees as well. Look at that lovely light tree there. Perfect. Yeah, you've achieved some nice watercolor effects here. And also what's quite nice, Isabel, is that line of the shadows there, having this blue and this all sort of soft clouds. Nice touch. Yes, well done. Let's get rid of my drawing icons. Thanks, Isabel. And John D. Well, it's a nice, colourful scene. I think with this, John, maybe it would look better if there was some lighter areas in it. We've got a lot of sort of middle values in it. The value of the trees, the buildings on the left-hand side, the shadows, the greenery here. So maybe try and introduce just some lighter areas. So we could have got maybe, as a suggestion, maybe a lighter area there in that middle ground. As the light was coming through on the other side of the pub, between the pub and that big tree, maybe some lighter area, almost keep the paper white, to be quite extreme. as a suggestion to try and get in a greater range of tonal values. I like the warm colours though. You've got a nice style. You've got a nice style, John. Figures are really good and lively. Just watch with the overworking of the parasol. Keep it simpler and less of these lines coming down. You've gone for quite an interesting sky there as well. Yeah, it's a different interpretation of the scene and a different painting style. Well done, John. I think the perspective is good as well. Cars could be a bit bigger. They sort of hide down behind that foliage, so the tops of the cars could have been almost like that, a little bit higher. All right. And John Q. Just zoom in a bit on this one. Right, John gets the prize so far for the most people. We've replaced that car in the bottom left-hand corner with these two figures. Now, with these figures, they might be just a little bit too light down there in the shadows, or maybe it's the lighter edge to them. I would have maybe gone in quite dark with those, perhaps a little bit lighter on the shadow, but darker with the figures. The other figures, they were brilliant. Gonna have to count how many figures we've got now. We'll have a prize for the most figures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 figures. Good perspective with the cars, the buildings on the right-hand side. Just be careful, a little bit of overworking of those buildings. Bit like the previous, John. Maybe consider getting a lighter band, a shard of light coming through that middle ground. That might work quite well as also. And the tree, make it a bit more solid, this tree, especially on the right-hand side with the light coming from the left, so darker, a little bit darker on that right-hand side there. Well done, John. And Joy. Just to zoom into this. A nice, soft representation of the scene. I like these figures here on the left. Looks like an adult and child maybe there. Sort of in the shadows, and then those two figures there sort of coming down a slope. These figures here could be a little bit larger from a perspective point of view, a little bit larger and maybe a little bit higher as well. That tree is spectacular. The green that you've got there, Joy, on that tree is fantastic. And what's also nice is the bit of negative painting around that shape there to give us a lighter bush just sort of creeping out from behind the pub. Very effective. Yeah, cars really well drawn as well. Just be careful overworking the wheel arches and the tyres. Yeah, well done, Joy. Thank you. And Carter. Oh, I love that colour. What would you describe that as? Cobalt blue? It's like a sort of warmish cobalt blue. Beautiful. Yeah, it really does stand out. And it's sort of, in a way, it's repeated a little bit in the sky and a little bit on that car. It's a nice sort of balance to it, having that blue there, that blue there, and that blue there. Really good figures. You don't quite beat John on the on the competition. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 figures. Yeah, group of 3, group of 5. Yeah, lovely. It's a different style. Perspective is good, or maybe on the left-hand side, that wall could be a little bit more, the top of the wall could be a little bit more horizontal. I think that angle there is right. The tops of the cars down the right-hand side, those cars are lovely. Yeah, we've got some birds sitting on the wire, which you typically would do. A little bit of detail with the horse, picture of a horse on the pub sign, and I like that bird there soaring around mid-air. Well done. Thanks, Carla. And Karen. Oh, Karen's gone for that car down in the bottom left-hand corner. And it's a really well drawn and painted car. Your cars are brilliant. Good figures as well. Just be careful, a little bit of overworking in certain areas, like that edge there. Perhaps that could have been a harder edge, that right-hand side of the pub. We've got a sort of a ghost-like line appearing there. Although having said that, it's a sort of style that you've got. That sort of, yes, I can see what you're doing. You're laying down sort of a number of different transparent layers to achieve your effect. It's a nice soft scene. This is a similar way to Joy's style earlier. That tree is lovely. Beautiful tree, similar style, transparent layers, perfect. Nice dry brush marks to try and achieve the effect of the texture of the walls there on the left-hand side. Very effective. Yeah, well done. And Kazim. Now, going back to what I said earlier about some photographs appearing, that the lighting maybe appearing a little bit off on some of these photos. I reckon Kazim's would be a lot lighter than this. The photograph looks a little bit dark, but it's got some impact. I love that line. I love that line there and there. Very sharp angle connecting the pub to those tables. Yeah. Good strong shadows, nice and dark, lots of contrast. Lovely contrast with the light of the figures and the dark of the background. Perhaps that guy's head could be a little bit bigger, as could the female figure, just a tiny bit larger. Perspective is brilliant though, Kazim. Nice sky, good trees. Yeah, very nice. Well done, Kazim. And Lani. Perspective on the left, good. On the right, I'm not sure about this darker shape here, if it's supposed to be a hedge or something like that, where this whole right-hand side looks like we're looking uphill a little bit, whereas it should be all on the level. So the road might slope down a little bit like that. And the tops of the cars, thinking about the height, so assuming those two figures are correct where they are, just take a line across their shoulders, and that might be where a top of a car might be. So parked cars might be along like that, and then the backs of the cars, something like that. My drawing is terrible, but you get the general idea. So just watch your perspective a little bit. Elsewhere, just watch the overworking of the shadows, try and keep it nice and fresh and do it all in one, but a nice transition for the cool of the pub wall. Nice and warm with those shadows, nice texture across the ground. A lovely shade of green for the background. Keep that background trees though, maybe a little bit cooler, a little bit lighter, pushes them back a bit more. Avoid too much detail on the houses on the right hand side as well, with the defining these darker edges to the elements of the rooftop and the side of the buildings. Want to keep it sort of nice and simple. Lillian. Yes, it's got a nice sort of effect about it. A sort of softish, lots of soft edges. Don't think the perspective of the pub is strictly speaking correct. It should be maybe a little bit more like that, with the apex of that roof there. The car in the bottom left-hand corner, maybe it's that left-hand, oops, go back to it. It's that left-hand edge there. I'm going to zoom into it. That left-hand edge is just a little bit too light. I think making it darker, you can almost get away with it, but I'm still 50-50 as regards whether it's worthwhile having that dominant car there down that bottom right hand corner. You haven't bothered with the benches, that's all right. I like the idea of the sign just jutting up above the shadows. So we're just introducing a break in that shadow line there. Figures are very good. Love the female figure. Very good. And then on the right hand side, yeah, those cars look all right. Yeah, generally it's, apart from that top of that roof there, perspective is brilliant. And I like the way that you've done the tree there, Lillian, and the sky. Very, very nice. Thank you. And Lydia. So there's a little bit of a slope here, which I quite like. That sort of feeling of the pub being a bit higher, and we've got a bit of a slope, top left to bottom right. I quite like that. Nice transition of the building to the shadows there. I think what emphasizes that slope is maybe that angle there. It looks a little bit steeper. So it almost appears like we're looking up to that building a little bit more. Lovely way that you've done the windows though. Fairly good figures. Let's just zoom in. The arms are a little bit too big on those figures perhaps, but other than that, good proportion of the head to the body. Parasols a little bit too fat. They could be stretched wider. Benches are good. Lovely tree as well. Got a little bit of scratching out there as well, which works, well, sort of works okay. Maybe, strictly speaking, not the ideal thing to put on a tree like that, but that would work. That technique certainly would work really well, and you've done it superbly well here, Lydia, but maybe a more distant group of trees and you wanted to scratch out maybe the lower parts of the trunks that were catching the light lower down. Nice value of those background trees. Those cars on the right-hand side, superb. Nice texture of the grass as well on the right-hand side. Yeah, I just love that sort of slope that you've got. It's quite nice, quite attractive. It makes it look more sort of unkempt and oldie-worldy. It's got a nice feeling about it. Well done, Lydia. And Lynn. I love the watercolour effect here. This sort of cauliflowers or blooms appearing. Yeah, lovely. A bit like me, you got that hard edge on the edge of the shadow where perhaps you had quite a sort of watery mixture to the shadow. And then as it dried, the sediment sort of settled on the edge of that shape, which happened to some extent with mine. But I love that effect in there. Beautiful. It's really well drawn. Not so sure about the pub roof here, the angle, the perspective, but I like it. You've kept the right hand side really simple, maybe with a little bit of lifting out where you might have felt you've got a bit more detailed. Bit of lifting out here as well, works really well. Yeah, good figures. Love those two figures there. Well done. Nice one, Lynn. Thank you. And Mike. It's nice and bold. Perhaps the windows stand out a bit too much, Mike. I think go a little bit looser or darker on this left-hand side here so that the windows don't stand out so much. With the edge of the shadow, try and make it a little bit of a harder edge to that shadow. Figures are good, although that head there might be just a little bit too large. And with the figures underneath the parasol again, a little bit too fat, make it a bit wider, stretch it out, make it a bit thinner. Maybe with some of those figures, just consider a little bit of highlight or a little bit of white paint. I'd be tempted to do that, just make them stand out a bit. Maybe a little bit of where I'm drawing red, if you imagine that's white, just a little bit, and perhaps a little bit of white for the tabletops as well, as a little bit of a highlight. Lovely tree though there, beautiful green. Just be careful with too much detail on the buildings on the right side. Those cars are superb. Very, very good cars. Yeah, well done, Mike. Thank you. And Nydia. Now, I reckon this photo is a little bit too dark. I bet your painting is a lot lighter, a lot brighter than this. The shadow, like a few others, try and resist going over the shadow twice. It's a little bit overworked. We can see that sort of the two layers appearing there. Other than that, perspective-wise, I think we're nearly there. The top wall could be a little bit more horizontal, that top wall. On the right-hand side, now those figures could be a bit bigger. On the right-hand side, those cars sort of look all right to me. Yep, I think they're okay. Tree could have been a little bit darker, especially there at the base. Perhaps consider some darkness in the distance as well, just to give us a little bit more contrast with the lighter things in front. So the figures, the umbrellas, just give us a bit more of an impact there. Yep, excellent. Well done, Nydia. Thank you. And Pablo. Oh, what a lovely scene. Two cyclists here. Those cyclists are superbly drawn and painted. Maybe with the position of that cyclist, if it was just slightly to the right, Pablo, if the cyclist was sort of there, that might work. But I like the idea. This guy, very well drawn and painted. Look, these two figures are having some kind of a communication. The proportions are just right. Perhaps a bit too much detail on the brick wall in the bottom left-hand corner. Perspective is very good, actually. I like the way that you've done the ground as well with these little marks to show the. It almost looks like a snowy scene. Quite a coolish look to it. That sky is fantastic, and I like that green as well. And the edge, it's got a certain style of it. Maybe the tree is a little bit too perfect, too symmetrical, but I do like that edge there on that right-hand side, this sort of little, the shape of the edges and the edge of the canopy, brilliant. And that sky is superb. Lovely sky. Well done, Pablo. And that sign is well drawn as well. Yep, a nice interpretation of the scene. Very, very nice. Thank you. Ravi. Big impact. Lovely dark shadows. Bright light coming in. Perhaps the houses on the right could be a little bit higher. But you really have achieved the feeling of bright light here. Great. Let's just zoom into these shadows. Lovely shadows. Different colours going on there. Browns, blues, greens. Figures emerging from it. You've spaced out these two figures a little bit more. Two more distant figures under the parasol. Lovely conifer there. And a little bit of light at the bottom. Bit of negative painting around that just to give us some lighter bushes at the base. Yeah, perspective is actually very, very good. All the angles are brilliant. Well done, Ravi. And Rhonda. Oh, this is really well drawn. The perspective is brilliant. Just be careful with the overworking of the shadows. Nice two figures. Again, consider clothing them differently so they're not too identical. But I do like that right-hand figure there. Very nice. Parasols could be a little bit wider. Cars are really good as well. Yeah, it's a nice scene. I like the way that you've done the tree as well, Rhonda. That's sort of almost like a yellow ochre green there, and that more of a darker olive green on the right-hand side. Yeah, I think the shadow is just a little bit too over it. And also consider a smoother transition from the color or the value of the wall down to the shadow. Just as there's a gradual transition. It's not like one object and then another object, so different from each other. Sally. Now, these two figures, they are, to me, it looks like they're sideways onto us, and they are looking out across the village there. Maybe they've got a house on the other side of the road. But I like the placement of those figures. That looks really good. And the light of those figures against the darker background. Yeah, it's a very nice composition. The way you've painted around those bollards on the right-hand side as well. Excellent. Yeah, well done, Sally. Sarrow. Oh, we've got two ladies here walking towards us. With those ladies, there's quite a dark, I'm not sure if the edge of the shadow would be exactly in line with those figures. Trying to think about it now. So if we've got the back edge of that shadow, maybe the shadow here might be a little bit higher, so that might be in shade, possibly, and then that figure there as an idea. But those figures are really good, and they're well placed. They're not right in the middle. Perfect placement with the other figures. Perspective is brilliant. Not so sure about this kind of line here, but you've got the right colour of the buildings in that area. Good cars, lovely tree. Yeah, two very nice figures. Just my comment about the shadow, though, the shadow line on those, but they look really good with the shades and the sunglasses. With the windows, they stand out just a little bit too much. Perhaps the wall, the shady wall, could be a tiny bit dark or not so severe, but you've done them in a loose way. You haven't sort of made them too perfect looking with a rectangle and all the panes of the windows, kept it quite loose. Lovely tree. Yeah, well done, Sarrow and Suniti. And I think the photo might be a little bit out of focus, but we can see what's going on. Oh, you've gone for two female figures, again, walking towards us. You've got the feeling of that bush or a hedge on the left-hand side. Good perspective on the left-hand side. Not so sure on the right-hand side. We've got that uphill going on, and those cars, the tops of cars could be a little bit more level, a bit higher as well. The tree could be a little bit more solid. Try not to be too fussy with a brush or small brush making all these marks. Try and make it a bit more solid, I would say, especially on the right-hand side. And the background, trees, yeah, just the right value. Lovely sky, very nice sky. A parasol, again, could be a little bit wider. Well done, Suniti. And Theo. Well, a very distinctive style. I like the way that these two parasols here are sort of symmetrically placed in the two figures below. Those figures are brilliant. Maybe the figures are a little bit, the heads are a little bit too small, but it's a nice style about it. Yeah. Not sure about the perspective on the right-hand side with those cars, but you've got a sort of repetition of things going on here. The lines going across the foreground, the shape of those umbrellas, the cars, 1, 2, 3, the bollards. Yeah, you've got the windows. Maybe the windows are a little bit too small, but it's a nice style. Nice soft background as well. I like it. It's a different way of doing that scene. Well done, Theo. And is this the last one? Oh no, we've got two more. Tony. Right. So perspective is all right. Don't think the parasols are too symmetrical, could be wider. Good figures. Shadows a little bit overworked, and also try and make them, add in a few more colours into them and try and avoid that line there. So it's try and get a gradual transition of the lighter value to the darker shadow. Background tree, yep, that looks all right. Lovely. That sky is fantastic. Your edge of your clouds, superb mixture of edges, hard and soft. Kept the right-hand houses nice and simple. Yeah, well done, Tony. Yeah, just the shape. I think it's the shape of those, the symmetry of those umbrellas, just slightly off there. And William. Oh, really colourful scene. And we've got a sports car in here. Not sure what the number plate is, but yeah, nice scene. And a landlady is bringing out some drinks to some customers out on the pub garden there. Not so sure about the shape of the umbrellas. They need to be a little bit lower, I think. And then with perspective, watch the height of the figures. That car's just a little bit too low, could be a bit higher. And with the heights of the figures, because we are on level ground, the heights of the figures should be all in line there, okay? Particularly the standing ones. So those two at the back could be a little bit lower, all right? Something like that on that scene. Cars on the right-hand side are brilliant. I like that yellow against the blue. It's very effective. And you've gone for a different sort of colouring of those buildings on the right-hand side. That too is also really nice as a different touch. Background, light, pushes it back. Yeah, a nice colourful scene. Well done, William. Well, that's the last one. If you would like to take part, all painters of any kind of level with watercolour, well, we are, I should say, it is in watercolour, okay? We're just using watercolour, although you have seen a few people using a liner wash. I don't mind at all, doesn't matter. You use your own style, as long as it does involve watercolour at some stage. That's the whole idea. And if you haven't taken part in one before or an online workshop, have a go. Go over to crowdcast.io/Tim Wilmot. You might catch a live one coming up, or indeed attend one of the previous ones. And if you want to have a go at the previous one, love you too. And also I'll give you a video critique as well in return when you send your photo of your painting to me. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you found that of interest. Not one of my normal watercolor tutorials. I do have those on a fairly regular basis, but once a month I do these attendee paintings, and it is sometimes quite interesting just to see everyone's take on it and my particular comments. You know, I'm not an art teacher as such. I'm not a professional art teacher. I'm not an art critic, but it's just I'm a watercolor painter of 50 years, and it's just my particular interpretation and comments on these various different interpretations of the scene. So thanks for watching. Catch up with you on the next video. Bye-bye.